Welcome to the Week 3 post-game show. No sponsor, but we are joined by the usual crew. We have Tyler Cruz and Jeremy Morrison on the call here. We're going to get to them in a second. We'll let them get some opening words. We're going to break down the Week 3 games from Rhode Island and then actually do some way too early rankings. I cut off our conversation off air to try to save it for the post-game show. That's how into it we are tonight. A little late night recording. Tyler Cruz looking good as always. What's up?
Thanks, Joey. You look good as well. I think you should have just put it live before you even telling us. I think we had a pretty good flow going on.
We are going to pick that up in a little while. The way too early rankings, kind of get some tiers going to the teams, even though we're 1 to 2 games in. Jeremy, what's going on, man?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me. I'd like to point out I am wearing my shirt and Cruz is not. So I'm 2 for 2.
Anything here in Narragansett. All my stuff, all my legacy stuff's at home.
Sounds like excuses. I was going to put my shirt on. I'm wearing a different kind of legacy shirt. I'm also representing. So it's 2-on-1, Cruz. I'm sorry. But as far as Week 2, we saw 2 teams make their debut. But let's start with, I believe it was the closest game of the night. And that is true. One game was deceivingly not close. We'll get to them second. But the Swish Kabobs make their debut, and they get the win 67-61 over the Boston Blazers. Both you guys were courtside for this game. We can go to Jeremy first. Your first time seeing the Swish Kabobs, the first time a lot of us have seen that team. They have a couple new faces. Jeremy, what did you think about the Swish Kabobs and how they were able to pull that one out in the end?
The Swish Kabobs, they looked sloppy for sure. I think with any team going into it, they didn't have room throws them off, but they seemed to kind of get their flow going, and then they had some clutch threes hit at the end that really kind of separated them from the pack from the Blazers team, which kept it really close and even had the lead a few times. I was very proud to see the Blazers, but Swish edged out the victory with some good three-point shooting at the end.
Well, the Blazers' size matched up really well with the Swish Kabobs, and I don't think the Swish Kabobs are really going to experience that much in this league unless they play either halfway Crooks or Lob City, so I think that kind of threw them off. But Barbosa has always been really good in the end of games like that, and him and Greg Bell have played together before, so I think it is going to take a transition stage for this new team, but I think what we're seeing is kind of a middle-of-the-pack Swish Kabobs team.
And we were talking about the Boston Blazers. You know, they had a tough game to open the season against Lob City, and then they take on a Swish Kabobs team who has been in the league before. But we mentioned quickly, you know, they impressed us, Jeremy, and you mentioned it as well. You know, the Boston Blazers, I think, as they play some of the other teams in the league, are going to, you know, be one of those teams that can be frisky, you know, on a given night.
Yeah, absolutely. I believe it was Evan St. Pierre that played this week and not last week, and he brought 12 points, hit some threes, has a lot of size. He could catch lobs and pull down the floor. So I think he was a huge addition. But also Greg Strickland, he really struggled last year, turned it over a lot, and shot a really low percent. And he was 7 for 14 this week. So I think he's kind of found his groove, and I'm excited to see them play. I think they're getting better every game, even though they lost it this time. It was close.
Yeah, and I think they played 2 good teams to start off. I think we're going to see them play a lot better this season. They're a very good team. They'll figure it out. They can ball, and they just have to start balling on the low rim. I think that's really what it is.
The adjustment, we always talk about it, takes some time for every team. And so speaking of 2 teams who have adjusted, Boom Shakalaka and the Werewolves, they kicked off Week 2. 2 teams that have played each other numerous times going back to the first season here in Rhode Island. So they're one of the original, well, 2 of the original teams. Boom Shakalaka was able to get the win 68-49. We were talking about that game before coming on air, and Jeremy was like, I was surprised it was that wide of a margin. And that's thanks to Lucas Martin and Boom Shakalaka pulling away in the fourth quarter. You know, they had a 20-point edge in that fourth quarter. We'll start with Cruz this time, kind of maybe, you know, what you saw last night compared to teams of the past for those 2 teams. But Boom does take the win and improves to 2-0.
Yeah, and I was looking at it before the game, and I was thinking, well, I look at the Werewolves and I look at their three best players. You got Brian, you have Dave Campbell, and you have Gino. You look at Boom Shakalaka, and there's Lucas Martin, there's Cole Ferguson, and there's Belleville, who can get hot at times, but he can get locked up at times too. Belleville's a great player, no disrespect. But so I was like, okay, I think the Werewolves have an advantage in their three key players here. But if Lucas goes and does Lucas, then Boom will win by 1,000 like they do every time Lucas does Lucas. And when he's shooting like that, what do you have, 31 points? You just can't really stop it at all. He was talking to the scorers table during the game. And he was like, don't people know I shoot threes? Why aren't they guarding me? I'm like, dude, they're not guarding you because you're shooting it from half court. I mean, he's insane.
And Jeremy, yeah, go ahead on what you saw, the first time seeing those teams face off.
Yeah, watching the Werewolves warming up, that was the first time I've seen them as a team. And I really thought that they were going to win. They looked like they had a lot more size. They looked like they had been playing together for a while. And they just looked like they had more basketball players on the team, no disrespect to Boom. But and they kept it close throughout the first half. But Boom brought it back. Lucas hit 5 threes in a row. And I forgot which number it was, but they were able to hit a great alley-oop. And I was like, okay, these guys have also played together for a long time.
Campbell and Heston, yeah.
And,
Campbell and Heston had a great alley-oop, and then I think Ferguson
right.
had one too with, I think, Jeremy. But that was just a great game overall. And, I mean, I looked at it like this. In the past, Werewolves and Boom has been close. The Werewolves added Dave Campbell. Boom lost Nate Stitchell and Trevor D'Amico. I mean, logically, I didn't expect Boom to win, but Lucas is an X factor. And when you have guys like Cole complimenting him, then it works really well.
Yeah, Dave Campbell, the guy with the long sleeve white T-shirt, if I'm not mistaken, he was getting hot in the first half, but he didn't play as many minutes as I think he should have. And I remember hearing him comment to his friends, "I was hot and they took me out." I think Werewolves give themselves a disjustice by taking Dave Campbell out when he had the hot hand. He looked like he could score wherever he wanted to.
I'm gonna bite my tongue when I comment on the coaching decisions with the Werewolves. I think we should move on.
Yeah, I think that was something you mentioned last night. I was gonna let you go. Cruz, but we can move on before we get in trouble on the Twitter. Let's go to the Skyhookers and the Alaskan Bullworms. Both teams now 1-1, I believe. I could be wrong, but the Skyhookers get the win 76-56 in a game that was in control, in the Skyhookers' favor by halftime. And we may have lost Tyler Cruz. Oh no! So we will invite him back. Give me 1 second, Jeremy. We will touch on the Skyhookers in a second, if you want to pop open that box score. But that was a game of size and a game of Brendan O'Donnell, who, really ran the show for the Skyhookers. He's going to be the player that we talk about a lot, and I think we have Cruz back, which is a good thing. Awesome. Hi, Tyler. Talking about the Skyhookers, O'Donnell, and how they had some, impactful players in their taller players who were able to take advantage of the Alaskan Bullworms. They have size. I think the Skyhookers big men were more athletic.
Yeah, and it's
faster. And go ahead.
It's not about size; it's about quality size. You can't just throw any tall guy out on the basketball court and expect him to compete, even with the low rim. So I think, a 17 advantage on the rebounding in the rebounding margin. I worded that terribly, but they had a 17 rebounding advantage, and that's just dominant. When you dominate that well, you're going to dominate the game, and you saw it 76-56. It all starts in the paint. 3-point shooting is, I think, it's a bonus. It helps. It's a bonus. It's great, but it all starts in the paint.
Yeah, I think the trick with big men in this league is to just, even if you're not the greatest athlete, anchor yourself in the paint, force up the threes, and if anybody's trying to drive, you're there to smother them. I think a lot of these, especially with like how basketball is played now, they might come out to the 3-point line and go over screens. But I think with this low of a rim, if you got the size advantage, you got to take advantage of that.
Yeah, especially on the offensive glass, it's all about the possessions you get in a game, and if you can maximize that, you have a very good chance of winning the game.
Speaking of maximizing possessions, of big men who can dribble and move and shoot threes, new additions, teams making their debut. Want me to keep going?
You could just mention that the halfway Crooks are a very good team this year. I really liked Brett. I was talking to Jared after the game, and he said that he brings a lot of energy, and I was like, you took that word out of my mouth. That is the one word I would use to describe what Brett brings to your team, and that's energy.
Yeah, let me set it up. I'm sure we'll have plenty of time to talk about the halfway Crooks. I'm confident in that. But they did make their debut. They beat the Pizza Rolls 90-50, and the size advantage was very evident. I'll let you guys touch on that. The first play of the game was a John Saline post pump fake dunk. And that kind of set the tone early. And then it was all Dylan Lincoln. And you mentioned Brett Cody. A lot of familiar faces on the halfway Crooks, which Cruz will touch upon. And then, Jeremy on what he saw from, a team that has played before and then is trying to work a new player in. Go ahead, Jeremy, on what you saw from the halfway Crooks as we they take on Duyer's boys next week. So that's going to be fun. I'm excited for that. But what you saw from week 2 in the Crooks.
Yeah, you mentioned Jared Hansen. I remember you told me he's probably our best scorer before the game, but he just looked like the kind of guy that can totally contribute to a game without taking a million shots. He was 4 for 6. He was really efficient. He didn't rack up a bunch of assists or rebounds, but he was just know how to play team basketball. And I think you guys have a lot of ball handlers on the team, which I think is helpful. A lot of these teams that maybe are at the bottom of the pack only have 1 or 2 guys that can create their own shot. And then they get past the ball and then they kind of get stuck. But you guys have 3 or 4 guys in the court that can kind of take control of the play at any given time. And that's a big advantage.
And Cruz, it was different from last year, right, bud?
Oh, yeah, much different. You guys, like you said after the game, you guys got out and ran, and you started hot. You went on a 51-15 run in the first half. I put it in the article. The past halfway Crooks would dream of that. It was a lot different. And I think with Lincoln and Sline, if they're there consistently, because I remember that was kind of an issue with last year's halfway Crooks, was consistent attendance. I think Lincoln could give you a double-double every night with the attention that Sline draws to him and the talent that Lincoln has himself. And I think Brett's the perfect match for Jared. They are not the same guard at all, but they are both very effective guards in what they do.
For sure. And not to go too crazy, we're going to talk more about kind of the tiers of teams in a second, but for him to fit in as well as he did, granted, of the team we were playing, and that's a separate issue. We'll see how it goes in future weeks. But to have it all clicking like that, and I swear, I'm obviously on the halfway Crooks. We've talked about trying to run for 12 months now. Jared and I have had those conversations because of who handles the ball. And so it took one player to make those things a reality, no matter how much you talk about them. And so that helps the scoring load, and we're going to need it against Boom and the Werewolves and all that stuff. But any other comments quickly on what I just touched on?
Yeah, I'm excited. I mentioned this in the company group chat, how when is Boom and Crooks, when's their week? And it's a few weeks from now, but I think that the Crooks have all that Boom can handle plus more. I think they have more size, they have more ball handling, and they can beat them at their own game. So that game, I'm looking forward to seeing the result for that.
Nothing over there from Cruz. All right, let's keep it moving.
No, I completely agree with everything you guys said.
Cool. Well, I know one thing. Cruz is just over there quietly getting in the front seat, driving the halfway Crooks bandwagon. I'm all about it.
I think you guys are going to be great. I honestly think, and I think with your size, you match up with Lob City better than any team in the league. I'm not saying you can beat Lob City because at this point, after 3 championships, it might be a sin to have those words come out of my mouth. But you guys match up very well with them.
Yes. And speaking of Lob City, thanks, Cruz, for the transition there. They double up Duyer's boys, take them down 100-50. That was very good hosting by you. It's like you host a podcast or something. I don't know. But they take down Duyer's boys 100-50. And it was Joey Coro. It was Cody Crawford making his debut, and some big dunks from Vic and all of the highlights that we saw. Cruz, it was, Duyer's boys was in it. It only kind of got out of hand in the second, end of the second quarter and definitely in the second half. But that's what the Lob City does.
Had they scored 3 more points in week 1, they would have won 100-50 in back-to-back weeks. That's just who they are as a team. They will run up the score. They don't care. They will dunk on you. They will dunk on your whole team. Everybody on their team can really shoot except for Coro. Cody can light it up from 3 better than almost anybody I've ever seen in this league. He is absolutely insane. And Victor is probably one of the best athletes in the league. You attach that with the just freak of nature that's Joey Coro. That guy is just so lanky in his arms. He could just probably dunk standing up. We've never seen it, but he probably could.
And so a tough schedule for Duyer's boys. As I mentioned, they get the halfway Crooks next week. That's obviously a better matchup than Lob City for an
I
opponent.
told PJ to pick up a big man because you guys are huge.
Yeah, so we're going to see how that goes. But let's get into, and we'll start with Jeremy on this one as we start to wrap it up, kind of some of the tiers. We talked on this. We know we are through 1, maybe 2 games for these teams. So everything we say will change in a matter of a week, in a matter of days. But Jeremy, I think a good way to start with this is maybe what 4 teams you like so far to make the Final Four as a way to kind of get that top tier conversation going. What 4 teams impressed you the most through week 2?
Well, Lob City and I think halfway Crooks are up there for the top 2 in terms of having the whole package. Even though the Werewolves lost, I think that they can figure it out. They got to utilize their big man better. He had a kind of a disappointing game. And as for that 4th spot, I think I have to go with Boom Shakalaka right now. They don't really have any standout players except for Lucas who can hit threes. But if they're relying on him the whole time, that they might have trouble because he's not guaranteed to go off for 30 every time. But right now, I think they're 2-0 and they're playing really well. So I got to put them 4th.
Cruz?
I'd say it's a fight for second place right now, like it has been. And I think it's the halfway Crooks, Boom Shakalaka, and the Werewolves leading the charge. Swish Kabobs could get there. I haven't seen enough from them to put them there yet. They need to prove themselves. I think the losses of Tejan and Marquise, Jeremy, you don't know them, but they were very good wing players. They were very athletic, and I think that hurts them. And then I think it's really scrappy at the bottom right now. I can't really, because all the new teams have played good and better teams. Skyhookers played Boom. Boston Blazers played Lob. Duyers played Lob. They played the Werewolves. I mean, they need to play each other and kind of fight it out in order for there to be a ranking there.
Absolutely. That's why it's so early. It's kind of hard to rank teams so far, but just from the eye tests, they're right there where they were last year.
That's why we call it the way too early rankings. We are very aware of all the stipulations you guys are trying to put. So then next week, when you're saying the exact opposite, we don't have this footage to go off of. I see what you guys are doing. Half in, and Cruz is gone. I love it. All right. So that's
he didn't want to hear that.
Yeah, Cruz is out. He heard my comments. He's like, I had enough of this crap. All right. So for Tyler Cruz, for Jeremy Morrison, stay tuned for our 2-minute drill. That'll be coming up. For more power rankings, we have Top 5 Friday, as always, on Fridays. And Tyler is having laptop issues, is the notification I just got. So sucks. He won't get to see the end of the show. When I say my 2-minute drill for Connecticut this week will be better than his, you can tweet at us, comment on it, and I'm confident. And he got to see mine first, so it's a huge advantage. He's editing that right now. But I am confident in the competition we have going on. Jeremy, thank you very much for joining us. And as I mentioned, I'm Joey Zacco. We'll see you next week. We have week 3 and then a couple weeks off. So one last night of games in 2018 for these teams to show what they got. We'll see you in week 3.
See you next week.